And in fact, I made every time more difficult than the other, because even when things were working, I was so stressed about what the next fail point might be.
So can you do me a massive favor and produce, I think it was 250 pairs of these shorts, and send them over to me in the UK, and I promise you, Tanvir, I will pay you the money. And I thought, there's no chance he's going to say yes to this. There is not a chance in hell.
Remember, so a year into grad school, started hybrid, a few months go by, I'm already making more money than all of my professors combined, but I still have 2 more years of grad school.
Only 25% of businesses make it through their first 15 years. So to not find yourself as the 85%, today we're talking to Stefi Cohen, founder of the company Hybrid Performance, Ben Francis, founder and CEO of Gymshark, over $1 billion company, and Aubrey Marcus, founder and CEO of the company Honor. These guys are the experts in the field, and they can tell us exactly today how to start a successful company. These are 3 of the best people to be teaching this lesson today, a lesson on how to start a successful company. Today's video is sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can now get the Inspire Change series, Hardest Worker in the Room series, and the new Rise and Grind series. 100% of the profits go back into creating this content so we can deliver it for free of charge. I'm your host, Jordan Mulligan. Let's jump into the video.
Talk us through start of Gymshark.
So I wish I could say that I had this incredible strategic plan as to how it was all going to build out, but it was nothing like that. The reason that I actually made the Gymshark website was because I'd sort of done everything else. Not that I'd actually succeeded in it, because to be honest, I think everything else failed. I just wanted to make a fitness website that would transact. So it was a case of I wanted to sell something. So everything I'd mentioned before was either an app or a blog or a forum or a social network or whatever it was. None of those would transact. So I thought, how cool would it be to have a fitness website that would sell things? The only problem was I couldn't afford any stock to sell. I went to actually one of my friends that lived locally at the time. He worked for a company called USN, so a big South African supplement brand. And I said to him, like, right, what's the cheapest supplements I can buy off you so that I can sell them online, trying to buy stock for the website? And he said it was £8,000 a month minimum order. And like, I mean, I'd never seen £8,000 in my life, let alone £8,000 a month. So that was just a complete no-go. So I sort of hit this brick wall. And then I thought, well, I could drop ship, and drop shipping was brilliant for me because it meant I could load up the website with thousands and thousands of different supplements. So the website was massive and it looked really professional and brilliant. But I didn't have to buy any of the stock. So yes, I got to transact, which was brilliant, but it wasn't in the way that I wanted to. I wasn't holding stock at the time, but it was still an amazing experience, and built the website using Shopify at the time, which again was brilliant for me because it meant that it was actually quite easy to build the website. And yeah, it took a few months, it took quite a while, launched the website and absolutely nothing happened. Then a few months later we had our first sale and it was just absolutely incredible. It was £52, of which about £2 of that was profit by the time we'd shipped the supplement and everything, but it was the best £2 I'd ever made in my life, and it was just so cool. Like, it was just the most amazing feeling ever, and I was literally like running around my bedroom just buzzing. And yeah, then went on to obviously the website and shipped out the product. It all went great, and that was that. And to be honest, that did okay. Like, it was never going to do particularly brilliantly from a commercial perspective because the margins were so small. But for me, it was more of like an academic test that it could be done. Gymshark really didn't do a lot for the next few months. And then I remember being at the gym and just thinking, like, no one makes the clothes that we want to wear. At the time, there was other brands, sort of American brands, that would make big sort of baggy clothes. There wasn't any of the European brands really doing what we want. No one was speaking to the lifters that we were. So I just thought, why don't we, similar to websites and apps, why don't we just make them? So I bought a screen printer and a sewing machine and started to hand make the clothes that we wanted to wear to the gym. And even in that moment, it wasn't a case of let's make it to sell it. It just came from a place from no one's making it, so let's just make it for ourselves. And there was at the time a group of, there must have been at least 10 of us that would all go to the gym together, and we just started wearing it. After a while, decided to put things onto the website, and you know, the margins were much better on clothing. It just seemed to pick up traction so much more quickly than the supplements, and people just started to fall in love with the product. I'll never forget actually, at that point we were making our own clothes, and there wasn't this period of own clothes and then produced elsewhere, but there was a pair of shorts that I really wanted to produce. And I was messaging a guy and chatting to a guy quite regularly actually, a guy in Pakistan called Thankyou. And we were just chatting away and we were sort of sampling these shorts, and we basically completed this short. We had a finished product that I absolutely loved. And he'd done all the sampling for free just as a favour. And we finished it, and I said to him, this is absolutely brilliant, but the only problem is I can't afford to buy any of them. So can you do me a massive favour and produce, I think it was 250 pairs of these shorts, and send them over to me in the UK, and I promise you, Thankyou, I will pay you the money. And I thought, there's no chance he's going to say yes to this. There is not a chance in hell. But he was like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And he sent me the product. We put it on the website, and it just flew out. Within, I think, 48 hours, I sent him the money for the full order. And then that was when we'd sort of both started producing clothes externally with manufacturers, but also internally as well with the sewing machine and the screen printer. So yeah, at the start, I think there was about 2 years of handmaking product. From my nan taught me to sew, my mum taught me to sew. I'd never forget actually, there was a particular product that I was really struggling on with the sewing machine. And I just couldn't solve this problem. I just couldn't do it. And I had my shift at pizza would always be from 5 o'clock to 10 o'clock at night. And it was coming up to, I don't know, it must have been like 4:30 or whatever, and I just couldn't do this thing. So I said to my mum, I was like, can you please do me a massive favour and just try and like solve this for me, and video sort of an instruction for me so that when I come back from work, because she'd have been in bed, I can then just go and do it. So there was this video that she recorded of basically how to sort the sewing machine out and how to do what I wanted to do. And then I could come home and I guess carry on sewing through the night. And yeah, it was an amazing time. Although it's an amazing time looking back now, but obviously at the time I had no idea that this would be anything for me. That was just a bit of fun of an evening. So yeah, it's quite weird to look back now.
What was a typical day like right at the start? Like what was that like?
So the typical day actually is quite easy to explain. So I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go to university in the day. So get on the train, get into Aston, do the day. Normally finish uni, I don't know, say 4, go into Pizza Hut and do my working day 5 till 10, and then 10 p.m. onwards I would essentially be working on Gymshark. After about a year, I was still working at Pizza Hut at the time. The job as a delivery driver at Pizza Hut was quite useful because in between deliveries I could jump on my phone and do sort of customer service responses. So it was great because I was obviously being paid to work there. I'd get a free pizza at the end of every shift, and I could also work on Gymshark. So it was like the perfect job in many respects for me. And growing up, being a very, very introverted person, it was very useful for me to be in front of people and having that sort of customer service-like response. So I learned a lot doing the job as well.
And then at this time, what sort of business experience did you have?
The only business experience I had was the work with my granddad. And to be honest, that is pretty much it.
So for people like when you're starting out, you don't need to be an expert in business or anything like that. You can just get started off.
No, so I would say you don't need to be an expert, and I'd also say that there's definitely I think people underestimate the opportunity to take risk that you have when you're young. So going back to what I said right at the start, I managed to save, I think it was, I don't know, £2,000 or whatever it was, maybe probably less than that actually. And for me, that was my life savings, and I risked everything. So that thing of, I risked my life savings to do this, but it's just nothing in comparison to the risks that, you know, my grandparents and even my parents have taken. So yeah, I think the opportunity to take risk as a young person is something that's definitely underestimated and just isn't being spoken about enough.
I think it's admirable that you say like it's nothing, but to a young guy, £2,000, that's your new car, or do you know what I mean? That's like it's a big deal to drop that much money on something that who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, but there's a saying that I've heard. I think Jordan Peterson says it, and he says, "He who has a why can bear any how," and I think that's really important because, like, fitness was my why. Like, you've got to remember that fitness completely changed my life. Going to the gym shifted everything. It shifted my physical health, my mental health. It completely shifted my academic life. It got me into sort of a university that I thought I would never be able to get near. And it gave me the opportunity to learn things such as Photoshop, Dreamweaver and all the other stuff through the skills that I learned in the gym. So fitness for me was like my why. It was like, I want other people to have that experience. So for me to risk what at the time was my life savings was, honestly, there was not a moment where I thought, should I or shouldn't I do this? It was just straight up, I know this is the right thing to do.
Do you remember a specific moment for yourself that was like the start of the entrepreneurship? Do you remember, like, whether it's selling sweets at school or whatever that was? Was it one of those moments for yourself?
Yeah, a lot of people have these, like, I was at a lemonade stand and I outsold. I didn't do any of that. Really, I started with marketing, and I was helping other entrepreneurs sell their products, and I did all kinds of different things, from public markets in the energy sector to nutraceuticals and skincare to all kinds of different products, and we could go down all kinds of different rabbit holes of the other things I help people sell. It taught me what the consumer actually wanted, and then how to deliver something that they would be able to understand what the benefits were for that. So in a way, you know, I had a little marketing company, but that wasn't really entrepreneurial. That was really just me and a couple of people helping me help other people figure things out. And then I first started to try and make my own stuff, and there wasn't a lot of success, not even with On It, which ultimately became a titanic success. Initially, the first 2 products I came out with, which were basically hangover supplements, it failed. You know, I raised little over $100,000 from just 2 close friends and family, and basically wasted it all, and was down to the last bit of money that I had. Made a pivot, created Alpha Brain, the nootropic, partnered with Joe Rogan, and that was the start. And we never took on additional capital from there in growing our business over the next 10 years. Of course, that was the success. There was other failures. I also had a men's nail polish company because I was friends with a lot of fighters, and I saw them painting their nails. I was like, we need to make one of these for men. And that didn't do so good. So there was the successes and there was the failures. But ultimately, when it came down to On It, it was really about making stuff that I would really love.
So with On It or any of the other companies, was there a moment, like, in fact, let's go with On It, like a low moment where you was like, it's like break point, or it was like, do you remember a difficult time?
I remember countless difficult times. And in fact, I made every time more difficult than the other, because even when things were working, I was so stressed about what the next fail point might be. And I think that's part of the game. Like, part of the game is to see every risk and play out every scenario where it's going to fail, and live that scenario and try to circumvent and prevent that reality from happening. It's what the Stoics called premeditation, right? It's like going through and understanding how every single way this beautiful thing that you're creating could be destroyed. And so I lived in that reality for a long time, but we had plenty of different crises. You know, one crisis in particular, we were really close to taking on an investment partner, got to the 1 yard line, distributed all of our working capital because we thought we were going to get a bunch of money in. The deal failed at the last moment. And actually our chief financial officer walked into the room and said, I'm leaving, I'm out of here. You guys are going to be bankrupt in 3 months and you're done, so I'm leaving. He didn't even give notice, anything. He just walked right out of the room. We call that moment cashpocalypse, because it was like, that was like a real moment where we didn't know if we were going to make it. But I always had faith, because I had faith because we'd always treated our vendors right, we treated our customers right, and all of those relationships where we'd really treated everybody right, our employees, everybody around us, they stood by us in that really hard time, and we were able to make it through.
Something I would say myself, my brother Luca, and my other brother William are victims to is what you've just explained, like searching for the fail point. And I think it must be a thing that all business people, all entrepreneurs go through, looking at the thing that is going to fail next. Or how did you overcome that? Like, what is the thing to overcome that, or to manage it even?
Yeah, how did I overcome looking for the fail point? I didn't. And I still have difficulty doing it. Now, what is the antidote? Like, what is the remedy to that? It's to still look, but to hold on to faith. Because guess what? I'm literally batting 1,000. I'm 100% for taking on a challenge and having something happen and coming through the other side with greater knowledge, with greater strength, with greater resolve, with greater insight. Like, I've never actually failed. I've just learned. But so instead of looking at this next thing that's going to happen, like, well, if this thing happens, it's all over. It's not going to be all over. It never has been. I have no evidence to actually say that the next thing is going to take me out. I have only evidence that I'm going to make it through. So I'm learning to just have more faith. But I cannot stop my mind, nor would I want to stop my mind from seeing all the fail points. I still want to see them, but underneath that, instead of fear and anxiety, it's like, okay, this might happen. I don't want that to happen. I'll prevent that from happening as best I can. But if it does happen, I'm going to be fine.
Do you remember the point where you felt we'd reached success on it? Like we'd got over that curve, you know, like where it wasn't like, it was more tangible to yourself?
I mean, the first point where the sales really picked up, you know, and the sales felt like they were effortless, like I wasn't grinding for each one. It was like we went from headwind to tailwind. I mean, that was a powerful moment. Of course, building out the infrastructure at that point, that became its own challenge. Like who's gonna help in this department, in this department, in this department, logistics and fulfillment and supply and all of these. So we had a bunch of generalists that we hired, just people who could do many different things, and eventually had to replace all those generalists with specialists, with real experts in each different category. So I could tell that we had something successful when the sales started flowing easily. But there was never really a point where I ever felt like, man, we made it. You know, it always felt to me precarious, probably until I got to the point where things were so smooth, I was able to step down as CEO of On It and hand it over to an incredibly capable CEO who could actually do the job that I was doing better than I could. Not because of necessarily his aptitude, but his willingness to stay in there, put in those 10 to 12 hour days and actually be the CEO. And so it was a really easy choice. A lot of people said, was it hard to step down? No, it wasn't. It was like the delight of my life to be able to step down, still offer my genius, still offer my inspiration, my leadership, but to have somebody else really man the ship. That was the point where it was like, wow, I think we got something that's really stable here.
Do you think a younger version of yourself could have stepped away and passed the baton? Like, better, like to say he does a job better than me is almost, you have to let go of something to be able to say that, I guess.
What a lot of people project about that is the idea that your identity is wrapped up in the letters CEO, right? And that's an easy thing to do. Your identity becomes being the CEO of the company that you created. And when it's part of your identity, it's incredibly hard to let go. Because when you let go of a piece of your identity doesn't just morph. Some part of it has to die and then be rebuilt. It's the myth of the phoenix, burned to the ashes and then rebuilt. So it feels like a death. But for me, my identity was never that wrapped up in it that it felt like a death. And I've gone through a lot of these deaths, and that's also partly why it makes it easy, is I've gone through many, many, many deaths and rebirths of my identity. But it was never so wrapped up in that aspect. Really, my identity is more wrapped up in, am I contributing to the world in a significant way? And as long as I'm contributing to the world in a significant way, my identity stays intact. So I was able to shift focus from On It into, a bunch of other different diversified categories. And so I didn't really feel it. I didn't feel the pain of it. And it's hard to say if my younger self, would have found that pain too. But I think as long as I was able to offer what I felt like was my gift to the world and have that gift received, because that's important, then I would have always been fine.
So talking about a story then, so early days when you were starting the business, like really difficult time for any business owners, those first few years. Do you remember, could you paint a picture what that was like?
Yeah, so we started hybrid during my first year of grad school. So I had been in school for a year. I thought that's what I wanted to do when I graduate. I really enjoyed reading literature and writing. So a big part of my role within hybrid, especially at the beginning, was writing blog posts and articles and coming up with content in a creative way to post it and get more eyes into the company. So that's kind of like what I was focused on. I remember when Hayden first came to me with the idea of selling online workout programs that were centered around the training philosophies that we had at that time, which was combining Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, and bodybuilding. when he came up with that idea, I was like, man, like, I'll support whatever you want to do. I'll help you however I can, but I can't see this thing making a ton of money. Like, maybe we can make a few $1,000s a month, but I can't see this being like a long-term thing. But he did, right? And I trusted him. He's a smart guy, and he was excited about it, so I supported him. And Hybrid's growth was so fast and so exponential that it didn't take me long to get behind, like really get behind and focus on it. It was a matter of like maybe 2 or 3 months where Hybrid already became extremely profitable, you know? And it wasn't because, oh, we're selling like this revolutionary training style. It was just right place, right time, right people, you know? Like, we were two faces that were perfect to promote this. We were doing the sport. We entered social media at a time where the algorithm was extremely friendly, you know, and generous. And yeah, it took off. So remember, so a year into grad school, started Hybrid, a few months go by, I'm already making more money than all of my professors combined, but I still have 2 more years of grad school. And I go into my first clinical rotation, and I absolutely hate the job. I'm like, holy f, what do you do? You know, I still have 2 more years of school. I've already committed. I hate leaving things in the middle. You know, I have this gig that apparently can be a thing. What do I do? And so I chose the challenge. The challenge was to finish school, super competitive program, 6% acceptance rate. Like, the graduation rate is also super low. The classes are so difficult. There's a policy that anything less than a 75 on any test gets you kicked out. Like, it was really challenging, and I loved it. Like, I remember like crying at night, midnight, being like, oh, fuck, this sucks, but it's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so good when I graduate. I'm gonna be so proud of myself, of like just everything that I had to go through, juggling business, lifting professionally and competing like every few weeks, and traveling for exposure, meeting people, networking, and still, you know, being able to graduate. So that was my life around that time. It was pretty hectic. It was insane. Like, I was just trying to do it all, and oftentimes failing miserably at everything.
What did a tough day look like in that time period?
So I would wake up at, I would set my alarm for 5 a.m. I would pop an Adderall, 20 milligrams of Adderall. I had a prescription, it wasn't legal. Pop 20 milligrams of Adderall, which would naturally wake me up at 6 with a panic attack. But I'm like, worth it, I'm focused. So woke up at 6, chug a Red Bull, study for an hour, just review my classes. My classes usually started at 8. Study for an hour, shower, change, be late for class. I would come to school with my barbell in the back of my car because I was friends with, or I developed a good relationship with one of my professors from undergrad. It was a strength coach, and his gym for his coaching certification was in the same building as all my PT school classes. So I would get there around like 8 a.m., go to school, leave the first class like about a half an hour early with my barbell. Like, I would bring it to the classroom. Then bring the barbell upstairs to the gym, you know, leave half an hour early, then be half an hour late for the next class. Stay there in school, leave, go to the library, study for a few hours, then go train. I'd be at the gym at like 8:30, and then I wouldn't leave until like 11 and do it all over again. Yeah, that was a tough day.
For how long? Like
months, forever. Like, that was kind of like most of my time in grad school. And then obviously, like, I would travel we didn't have class on Friday, so every other week I'd travel just to network, just to get my name out there. Like, we would go to like the biggest gyms in America. I remember going to Super Training, you know, Mark Bell's, before anything, and we just went there, and I was like, Mark, I'm a big fan of yours. You know, I just started lifting. I was wondering if you could give me a few pointers. Maybe you could teach me how to bench. That was one of the first times that I went to Mark, and now we're really good friends. But yeah, that's what I would do. I just tried to, and that's another kind of mentality or mantra or way to live my life, is be impossible to ignore. You know, just be in everyone's face. Just be impossible to ignore. Be really good so that people can't ignore you. It's impossible. And then just be up on everybody's face. Just like, if you don't ask, you don't get. So just be there, you know?
I love that, being possible to ignore. That is fantastic. Yeah, how, if you were to explain to somebody, I know it's happened over years for you, but like, how do you develop like a tenacity to be able to go, I'm just gonna hit, like, I'm a powerlifter, I'm gonna hit a gym and get my face out there, like I'm just gonna do that?
I think it's a big part is removing your ego, not caring if you get rejected, or if you don't get heard, or if you're not taken into account, or you're not taken seriously, not taking that personal, you know, and just really the understanding of that if you don't ask, you don't get. So, and being okay with not getting at certain times.
How would you describe your mindset? Like if you was to explain the way that you feel your mindset is to somebody, how would you describe it?
I think that I'm just a master of the mundane. Like I don't let my emotions influence what I have to do on a day-to-day basis. Like I just try to stay stoic most of the time. Like I try not to get too excited about anything, not too upset about anything. Just I try to kind of cruise by and do what I need to do on a daily basis, even if it's just a little bit. And I think that understanding of what consistency actually is, that's kind of what makes my mindset what it is. A lot of people think that consistency is like showing up every day at 100%, but consistency is just showing up every day a little bit, you know? Some days you show up 100%, some days you show up 5%, and that's totally cool, it's fine. So I'm just really good at doing boring shit for long periods of time, like way longer than anybody else could do that for. And I prove that with weightlifting, with powerlifting. It's two sports that are extremely boring, you know, where you're like just coming to the gym every day, not making progress. You know what that is? For like 10 years. And the longer that you're in the sport, the less progress that you make. It's the definition of insanity. You're coming in, you're doing the same thing over and over again, and you're seeing no results. Sometimes you might not get a PR in like 3 years, and you're still there, trying to add more weight with like you're almighty and falling short of your goals, but you just keep doing it. Just keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, and then one day maybe you get a breakthrough.
Thank you so much to Ben. Thank you so much to Stefi. Thank you so much to Aubrey. Starting a company, I think so many people think that it's based on luck. They think that it's based on the luck of the draw, you know, what was going to be popular at the time. For me, one of the tips that I wanted to allow you guys to know is that there's going to be failures. It doesn't mean that you can't be successful if you fail your first year, if you fail your second year. And the funny thing is with Gymshark is they had one of their worst years ever just before their most explosive year of growth. He didn't quit, he didn't leave. Aubrey Marcus had failures in the shape of other companies. You know, he started other companies that weren't successful. Stefi Cohen has battled with changes of industries and the COVID lockdown owning gyms. And my point is that it's not going to be smooth sailing. People expect success and instant success. You have to be willing to put in years of graft. You have to be willing. This is your life journey. This is not your 20s. This is not the first 2 years. It's not the first 3 years. If you're expecting success in the first 3 years, it can happen. It can happen in the first year. But start to think in decades. If you can start thinking in decades, you'll be successful in business. And that's my biggest tip to everybody. Don't expect an overnight success. You could have a great idea. And the problem is with so many people, they have this great idea and they think that is it. I've got a great idea, I'm entitled to the best success ever. So many people have good ideas. It's all based on execution. Execution is so paramount, and you've got to be willing to put in a decade, at least a decade, into your idea. Guys, today's video was sponsored by Mulliganbrothers.com, the best motivational clothing brand in the world, where you can now get all the new series, including the all-new Rise and Grind Gym Series clothes, with the link in the description. 100% of the profits go back into making this content for free. Thank you for watching. I am your host, Jordan Mulligan. Go follow me on Instagram. Have a blessed and productive day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.